Morning. You got your Bibles, Ecclesiastes chapter 11. It's a place that we're going to be, Ecclesiastes chapter 11. When I was growing up, MacGyver was one of those shows that was just kind of on TV in the background. Like, it seemed like it never really had a huge following, but I was home, during the summers, out of school, and it was just on the TV, and so you watched it sometime. If you don't know where you been, but if you don't know MacGyver, he's a guy that could make anything out of nothing. Like, give him a Q-tip and a lighter and maybe a little bit of kerosene, and he could save the world. And he did it for 6 whole years, several episodes every year. He did it. And so I was thinking what we talk about in Ecclesiastes today is going to be a lot like what MacGyver does in all of his episodes. And so I was thinking, what were some of the really unique things that MacGyver did? And so I Googled it, and it's really interesting. Like the one time that he took a blood pressure pump and an alarm clock, and he created a lie detector out of that and got himself, he always found himself in really tricky situations, and he'd have to find a way out. Well, creates a lie detector to get out of that. Another one was, and I think you could actually do this, I've heard. He had a broken down car and had to get out of town really quickly, and he stole some eggs from a chicken farm and put it in the radiator and fixed it. So I guess you can fix your radiator leaks with some eggs. Probably my favorite one, the one that I actually remember, is he had a gun wrapper and somehow just turned a gum wrapper into a bomb and got out of town. And so throughout all the seasons of MacGyver, what you find him doing is taking the materials that he's got around him and using those materials to make the best out of the situation, making the most out of the materials that he had. And when I think about, I'm rounding out this series on Ecclesiastes. And when I think about what's the message of the book, a lot of them, but it's bookended by a narrator saying, okay, this is one man's perspective on wisdom. It's not Proverbs that says this is how life always works. It's Ecclesiastes that says, I've seen some things in life that make me question how the world works, and what I've learned is this. And then he goes on 11 chapters of telling you what he has learned, and then he bookends that. The narrator comes back in chapter 12 and says, okay, so here's what he said, and here's what you ought to do about it. And essentially, it seems like the meat of Ecclesiastes is that life is going to move forward. Life's going to go on. Death is going to come at some point. We all go to the same place. We all go to the grave at some point. Life is going to appear random to us, and a lot of times in our life, we're going to try to question, why does this happen? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why has life turned out this way? But maybe the best we're going to be able to do is say life is sometimes random, and while you're here, make the most out of the materials that you have. Make the most of what God has given you in life. And so if you will, let's turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 11, and this is where I think we need to start rounding this series out. And essentially, he's going to say in Ecclesiastes 11, 7 through 10, God's given you life, right? Every day you wake up is a gift from the creator of the universe. Every day that you wake up, he is sustaining your life, and so this is good, and you need to enjoy your life and make the most of your life right now. Here's what he says, verse 11. He says, light is sweet, and it's pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. So, if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them all. Enjoy life. You're going to live some, who knows how long. Rejoice in the years that you have. But also, verse 8, let him remember that the days of darkness, they will be many. All that comes is vanity. That's the smoke, right? It doesn't seem like that's how life ought to operate and work, but it is. And so we're going to have good times, and life will be full of some good days, and light is good. Life's going to be full of both light and darkness, though. And so sometimes bad things are going to happen. The days of darkness, he says, will be many. And so he says in verse 9, rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart, in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these things, God will bring you into judgment. And so it's not just, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. That's not the message of the book. But it is enjoy the gifts that God gives you in life. We've talked about that for a while now. It's 5 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. He says, there's nothing better than sitting down and eating and drinking and enjoying time with family, and there's nothing better than the work that your hand finds to do and spending time with family. 5 times in the book, that's what he says. So those are going to be good days. We should maximize those good days, and we should really hold on to those good days. He says in verse 10, remove vexation from your heart and put away pain from your body, for youth and the dawn of life are vanity. We're going to have days of light, and we're going to have days of darkness. We're going to have mountains, and we're going to have valleys. We're going to have good times and bad times. And what Ecclesiastes will encourage us to do is to look for the good days and to spend some time enjoying those good days. And remembering that, even though I am having some good days, there will be some darkness that comes. That's just how life works. We're not going to be able to explain it, but just know that those days are coming. So enjoy your good days. Know that at some point there may be some not so good days. And in the end, remember that whatever you do, God's going to bring all that into his judgment, into justice. He's going to set things right. So sometimes we hear judgment and we think immediately everything is negative. But judgment is closely related to God's word for justice. And justice is not a totally negative word. Justice is a setting right of all the things, right? And so if I'm on the side of justice who's been wronging people and mistreating people, then justice is not going to be very good for me, because when things are set right, that means my wrong deeds are going to be brought to light. But if I'm on the side who's trying to seek the right thing and to do the right thing with my life, then justice is a good thing, especially if, as I've been trying to seek the right things and do the right thing and be the good person God wants me to be, if I've been trying to do that and I've been met with a lot of darkness in life, then justice is very good if it's the setting right of all the things that have been wrong. And so 5 times through the book, the writer of Ecclesiastes says, hey, look, there are going to be good days and bad days. Just make sure you're enjoying the good days whenever they come to you. 5 times he says that. That's a major theme of the book. And so I got 2 questions that I want to give you on this Thanksgiving week, as Lyle just mentioned. And as we maybe have a little bit more time this week with family or friends or people we don't see very often, and we sit down over a meal at a table together with people that we probably don't see as much as we'd like to in life. So as we embark on this week, where we maybe have a little bit more time, I want to ask you, number 1, what is one thing that you really enjoy? I'm not talking about I like to take a trip to the Bahamas or something like that. I'm talking about what's one thing, just maybe a relatively small thing that brings you some joy in your life. I want you to have something like that in mind. Maybe it is spending a little bit of time with the kids or the grandkids, or maybe it is spending a little time reading, or maybe it's a meal, or maybe it's something else. I don't know. What is it? One thing that you really notice brings you joy in life. That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, can you make sure that you do a little bit of that every day this week? I'm talking about what's a takeaway from the book of Ecclesiastes. That's got to be one. 5 times it recurs throughout the book. Whatever you find in life that brings you joy, whatever you find in life that's light, then accept that as the gift of God and enjoy it. Knowing that it may not always be this way, enjoy it while you can. Knowing that in the end, God's going to bring all this into judgment. Enjoy your life now. Thank God for your life right now. Not what it may be next month, not what it may be, 10, 20 years from now. Thank God for the life that you are living right now. Whether it's days of darkness or days of light, whether it's the peak or it's the valley, thank God for the gifts that he gives you in life right now. Next chapter 12. There's also remembrance here. He says a couple of times through this passage, remember. Verse 1, remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near, of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. This is it seems to be an old man looking back on life and providing some sort of commentary about it. And he says, look, I've aged now, and I've looked at life, and I've looked at what it provides and what it doesn't provide, and I've looked at how it goes and how it doesn't go, and how sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't make sense. And here I am, maybe old and decrepit, and I can't really enjoy a whole lot of things right now. And so he says, remember your life. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the dark, evil days come, in the years of which you will say, I have no pleasure. And then he goes through this long discussion of how your body kind of stops working, before the sun and light and moon and stars are darkened and the clouds return from the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house tremble, the strong men are bent, and the grinders cease, because they are few, and those who look through the windows are dimmed. He's talking about, your teeth fall out and your eyes get a little bit dim. And it goes through this long discussion of how your body just kind of stops working, near the end, and it's harder to enjoy life. And so he says, remember it and enjoy it when you can. Before, verse 6, before the silver cord is snapped, the golden bowl is broken, the pitcher is shattered at the fountain, and the wheel is broken at the cistern. And the dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. All is vanities. He says we're not going to live forever, right? This life is not all there is. And so remember your Creator in the days of your youth. And what he means by that is allow God to shape your perspective on what life is. He's the creator of life. He's the giver of life. God's the one who knows how life ought to go and how life is going to work best. And so remember your Creator in the days of your youth when you can enjoy life, and allow God to shape your perspective on this present life. The recurring theme, again, is that these little gifts are God's gifts to you in your life. The meals that you share with others, the people that you get to give life with, the meaningful work that your hand finds to do. He says, remember this as the gifts of God when you can enjoy them. And then the very end of the book, if you'll skip down to verse 13, he says, this is the end of the matter, all that has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. And so nothing in Ecclesiastes is a license to go out there and just live life how you want to live it. All right? That's never there. It's enjoy life that God gives you. It's not go, do everything that your little heart desires, and no matter where that takes you or how evil you become or how many sins you commit or whatever it is. It's not a license to go do all of that. It's enjoy the life that God is giving you now, because you don't know what tomorrow holds. It's James 4 when he says your life is like a vapor. It's here for now, but who knows if it's gone tomorrow. And so don't talk about all the future things that you're going to do. Yeah, it's great to have plans, but don't focus so much on that. Focus more on the present. Underlying that whole book, that whole thought, is the idea that we will at some point give an account of how we live. And so it's easy to come away from Ecclesiastes and say, I guess nothing matters, right? Because depending on your translation of the Bible, you have a word in there a lot of times, like 38 times, that says meaningless. Everything is meaningless. And so if that's how I'm reading the book, then okay, I guess I could come away from this saying, I guess nothing really matters. Like nothing is important. Everything is meaningless. Nothing has any meaning. But that's not the message of the book at all. The message is it's not going to make sense a lot of times. But it's not that nothing matters. It's the opposite. The message of Ecclesiastes is that everything matters. Everything matters. Because underlying all this, the narrator comes back in the end, as we talked about, and he says, okay, here's what matters. Right? Fear God, keep his commandments. That's the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment. All of it matters. Enjoy it while you can. Enjoy the light because the days of darkness are coming, but know that God will bring every deed into judgment, every secret thing or known thing, every good thing or evil thing. Everything matters. And if you go through the book of Ecclesiastes, here's the list. How we spend our time matters. How we manage our relationships matters. How we treat our kids and our grandkids and our family members, that matters. How we treat our spouses matters. How we do our jobs, what we do with money, matters. Ultimately, whether or not we love God and we love people, that matters. And so please don't come away from a study of Ecclesiastes and say, nothing matters. Everything is meaningless. Everything is vanity. I'm just going to go through life and do whatever in the world I want to do because nothing matters in life. Eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we die. That's not the message of the book. The message of the book is that everything matters. And so every day matters. And what I do with every day matters. The big things matter and the small things matter. And I'll give an account for how I've dealt with all of them. So what? That's the question. Where does this lead us? I want us to jump back to almost the middle of the book in Ecclesiastes chapter 5. And I want us to talk about this message, this theme that goes through the book and shows up several times. And it's essentially, thank God for what he's giving you right now. A lot of times if we listen to our prayers, a lot of times, if I'm hearing it the same way you are, a lot of times our prayers are, God, thank you for what you've done for us, or please do this for us. And so one is very backwards thinking. Thank you for what you've done for us, looks back. And please do this for us. Looks forward to what God is going to do for us in the future. But I'm not so sure that we spend a whole lot of time in the present. And that's where Ecclesiastes would want us to focus our attention for just a few minutes. Thank God for what you have right now. Ecclesiastes 5 again, verse 18. Behold, it says, what I've seen to be good and fitting is to eat, drink, and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, and the few days of his life that God has given him, for this is his lot. Verse 19, everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them, and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. So here's the big question that Ecclesiastes attempts to answer, I think. And the question is, how can I have lasting joy? Or how can I have lasting contentment? How can I have lasting thankfulness in a world where nothing really lasts? How can I have lasting fulfillment and meaning in life in a world where nothing really lasts? Where the writer is up front and saying, everything is kind of fleeting out there, and we can't make a whole lot of sense of it. There are days of good and days of bad, dark and light, and we don't know how it's going to go. Time marches on, death is coming. What do we do about it? How can I have lasting joy and peace and contentment and thanksgiving in a world where nothing lasts? Well, God wants us to find lasting enjoyment through the gifts that he gives us. And the problem with that is that a lot of times we just don't. And maybe it's because we're looking for something better. Or maybe we think we're entitled to something more. Or we have this attitude of, I would just be thankful to God and content with my life if I just was a little bit healthier or a little bit wealthier. I'd be happy and content and thankful for God for this life if I was, a little younger or a little smarter or a little more successful or I had a little more stuff or something like that. I'd be thankful if I just did this, accumulated this, acquired this, or achieved this in my life. So Ecclesiastes steps in and says, no, that's not the right way to look at it. Ecclesiastes invites us to reconsider our whole approach to being thankful. Ecclesiastes invites us to consider our whole thought process about being content. G.K. Chesterton wrote these words. He said, true contentment is a thing as active as agriculture. It's the power of getting out of any situation all that there is in it. I really like that. Right? It's the act of getting out of every situation all that is in it. It's not contentment, being thankful is not always looking forward to what I wish God would give me. It's looking at what God has given me and what I have in the present today and getting the most out of what God has given me. Here's what he says in Ecclesiastes 5, verse 19. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and the power to enjoy them, to accept his lot, to rejoice in his toil, this is God's gift to you. I really like what he says here, right? This is God's gift of your lot. It's not somebody else's lot. All right, you look around, and one of the evils I think of our day is this comparison trap that we fall into a lot. When I look at what you got, and it makes me feel really bad about what I got. Well, Ecclesiastes is not talking about what you got or what they got or what you saw somebody else may have got, right? It's not about what they got, it's about what you got. And he says, take every day, take your present time, and thank God for what he's given you right now. That is your lot. Not wishing for another's lot, not wishing for another's gift, not wishing for another's talent or anything like that. And so he says in verse 19, God's given you wealth and possessions and the power to enjoy them. And I'm thinking, why would God need to give power to enjoy a lot of wealth and possessions? Well, it's very simple. Because just having those things doesn't mean that you're going to enjoy those things. You've seen that in your life, right? You've seen that maybe in the life of others. When you look at their life and you think, they have so much. They've done so much. They're so healthy or wealthy. They have accumulated all these things. Why are they not the happiest person on the planet? Well, the simple Ecclesiastes answer is just because you have those things doesn't mean you're going to enjoy those things. Because even though I have those things, I may be looking forward to wanting more. And what typically happens is that we have these things, we accumulate these things, we got these things, and we tend to make those things our God. And so I have some pleasure in my life, but I want all the pleasure in my life. Or I want my life to be all pleasure. Who wouldn't? Or I have a bit of money, and I decide I want a lot more money, and so I make accumulating that my God, or clothes, or friends, or trophies, or whatever it may be. We tend to make those things our God. And so it may be that our meaningless, or our feeling of meaninglessness, is not because we have too much pain in our life. It may be because we have too much pleasure in our lives. It's not knowing the source of all these things. And so it's interesting to me that God says, I've given these wealth and these possessions and the power to enjoy them. And that power, it seems to me, can only happen in the presence, in the present, in the right here, right now of today. It's not a looking back. It's not a looking to the future. It's thank God for what he is doing for me, what he has done for me right here and right now. Look at what he says in verse 20. For he will, God will, or we will not much remember the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. That's the old phrase, man, time flies when you're having fun. Ecclesiastes 5:20, God will keep you so busy squeezing joy and opportunities out of life that you wonder, looking back, where did all the time go? And you'll be thankful for the times that God gave you. Unless you miss them because you're looking so much to the future or you're dwelling too much on the past. Ecclesiastes says God gives you these gifts in the present of your life right now. Be thankful for what he's done. Maybe look to the future a little, but not too much. Maybe think of the past some, but not too much. Live your life in the present and thank God for what he's doing for you right now. One writer I was reading talked about how this is the joyful art of making the most out of what you have. The joyful art of making the most out of what God has given you, not tomorrow, not yesterday, but today. That brings us back to our old friend, Mr. MacGyver. I don't know what materials you've got in your life right now. I don't know. For all of us in this room, it would be crazy for me to think I know what's going on in everybody's life. I've got no capacity to do that, no way to do that. I don't know if your days are more dark than light, or if your days are more light than dark. I don't know if you're on the peak or the valley or somewhere in between, going up, going down. I don't know all of your stories, but you do. I don't know what materials God is providing in your life today. I don't know what materials God's given you in the present right now. Not talking about the future or the past. I'm talking about today in November 2022. But I do know that in the end, time marches on. We're all heading towards kind of the same place, the grave, and life often appears random. We try to make sense of it and we can't. We try to figure out what's going on and we just don't. We try to grasp how life works, and it is elusive. So life will be full. This is what he says. Life will be full of both light and darkness, good and evil. Enjoy the good, the light, when you can. Make the most of what God is giving you today. 5 times in the book, that's what he says. In 12 short chapters, it's repeated so much. There's nothing better than taking what God has given you, the relationships, the family, the meals, the time together, and making the most of it while you can. Because time marches on, death is coming, and we don't know what tomorrow will bring. So that's my encouragement to you. Take today as the gift of God. Take what God brings into your life today as a gift from God. The times you spend with one another. We're in this room together, right? This time, view it as a gift from God. You're going to have lunch with people after this is over, and view that as a gift from God. If you're going to gather together in a small group sometime this afternoon or tonight, receive that as a gift from God. If you're going to come back together with a group of people from the church today, at any time, receive that as a gift from God. As you go through your week, when you have meals with people you don't see very much, receive that as a gift from God. When you put your kids to bed tonight, receive that time as a gift from God. Those are the materials that life is made of. Not just life, today. Those are the materials of today. And our job in Ecclesiastes is to make the most of the materials that God has brought into our lives today. Remembering that tomorrow's coming. If it's a day of light, that darkness may come. If things are going well, it's remembering that sometimes they won't go this well. So enjoy what you have today. Make the most of the materials God has given you. Always keep it in mind, in Ecclesiastes 12, as the book ends, that God will bring all into judgment. It's not that nothing matters. It's that everything matters. So enjoy what you can as God's gift, but know that God's justice is coming to set everything right in the end. I don't know where this has found you. I don't know, where you are, what materials you've got right now. I do know that justice is coming, that judgment is coming. And one day we will all appear before the judgment seat of Christ and give an account about what we've done in the body, whether good or evil, light or darkness, right or wrong. So I need to be thinking about what's coming down the line. Maybe you're here today and that message doesn't sit very well with you, and I understand that. I understand why that would be the case. And so maybe today there are things in your life that you've not received as God's gifts. Maybe there are things in your life right now you don't want those things to be brought to light. Maybe there are secret things in your life right now. Ecclesiastes talks about those. We read them earlier. Maybe there are secret things in your life right now that you're uncomfortable with, and nobody knows it but you. And so what we do at the end of every sermon is sing a song that we refer to as the invitation song. And sometimes that's an invitation to walk down to the front and sit on the front pew, and I'll talk to you, and the church will pray for you. And make no mistake, if that's what you need today, if you want people praying for you, that's a godly Christian thing to desire, and we want that. And so if that's your need, by all means, let's make that happen. We want to pray for you and encourage you. If there are things in your life that you want to put before the church so that we can all be praying for you to overcome those things, we want to do that. But I also know that this song is a time for a private response. And so maybe there are things in your life that you have neglected. Maybe there are things in your life that you have overlooked. Maybe there are blessings from God that you have just not seen as the blessings of God. And maybe privately you want to take a few minutes to get your heart right and to view those things as God's gift. That's what Ecclesiastes says. Or maybe on the negative side, you know it's going this way. Maybe there are secret things that nobody knows about but you, right? Nobody has any inclination that's going on in your life but you do. And so maybe you realize this is the time for me to think about what that is and to commit to not doing it anymore. And to commit to overcoming whatever that trial or that temptation is that you keep falling to. So maybe that's a personal time of reflection. Time that you decide, I want to be this godly person and I want to give my life to following Jesus. And so maybe today's the day that you decide to become a Christian. You're baptized into Christ, your sins are washed away, you bear the name Christ when you come up out of the water, and you live this life. It's all about seeking His will, walking in His steps, and modeling your life after His.